Hello, everybody. Welcome to the NDGK's third podcast. This is Nicola Kani coming right at you with my boys Zahid and Lawrence, and we're going to be discussing a couple of things today. Mostly the presidential debate which took place this week, which I'm sure you all found very exciting and interesting. It was the first time Kenya's actually had something of the sort, and personally, I thought it went really, really well, especially for a first time. Zahid, what do you think about the first debate that Kenya's had?
Well, I think it was.
About it?
I think it was pretty good. I think they did a good job. They handled it pretty well. It was presented pretty well. I think the second half was actually more interesting than the first, perhaps because of the nature of the questions was less serious and perhaps able to incite more conversation between the candidates rather than just between the presenter and the candidate itself.
Yeah, fair enough. I did find the second part more engaging and more of a debate, so to speak, because initially it looked like a Q&A, kind of like an interview with the candidates, asking them questions, rather than allowing them to kind of, interact with one another. Don't you agree? It was more like a Q&A.
I think questions are also very important because they bring out something that was missing. We have questions. Kenya have questions that a lot of things they need to know, a lot of things they need to hear, and so it was very important that the hard question be asked, that people make decisions knowing well what is actually expected of them. So I'm okay with both sessions. I think even the first session was more interesting than the second one because of the questions.
I guess sometimes it's important to ask the questions and to fuel the debate, so to speak, to at least start off on some kind of a platform. And speaking about platforms, this did give Kenyans a platform on which they could choose their candidate. We're not going to really mention names or judge them on their performances, but I think generally the quality of the responses given were of a pretty high standard. I'm not sure what you think about that, Zad. Do you think they're on a good standard? Do you think it was a decent standard, or do you think they could have done better?
I think each of the candidates actually had a different level of response. I felt like some of the candidates had a much more higher level of presentation in this one. Like they actually wanted to say what they wanted to say, but some of them were trying to keep it kind of like damage limitation. Let's just get through this. Let's get to the elections, and make sure that Kenyans don't have that much to think about us until then. It felt a little bit like that, to be honest.
Fair enough, but I think one thing that we can all agree on is that it ended peacefully. It ended benignly. I think that's something that needs to be carried on to post March 4th when the next president has been chosen. I think Kenyans need to learn from this debate. In the sense that they were peaceful, they maintained calm. There's no hostility. There was no kind of vulgarity involved or anything. It was pretty good. So I think that's what made it successful, is that they ended it peacefully. They shook hands and they just walked away, giving a good message to all Kenyans. Moving on to kind of the actual topics that were being discussed there. How do you think the candidates handled the question of tribalism?
Now, according to my own view, those people who are more involved in tribalism, they try to find a way of avoiding that question and try to clean their table, make them look like they're not involved into it. But we saw one candidate stand out and say that the leaders are denying the fact that they've been involved in tribalism for a long time. That's one of the things that came out of the whole discussion.
Well, yes, tribalism is a major issue in this country in particular. There's a lot of divide on tribal lines, and voting is usually conducted on tribal lines as well, I get a feeling. Zayed, do you think that the colonial legacy itself has something to do with why we have, institutionalized tribalism today?
From a historical point of view, that's very much the case. Definitely, the British did institutionalize tribalism. This is all to do with a thing called the gatekeeper, who controls the resources and so on. So they were able to split them up, kind of like divide and conquer. That was all based upon that. Yes, it became ingrained in the way they conducted themselves then, so it became quite a normality today. Trying to get it out becomes more of a problem. Because it's not so much a matter of whether you are tribalistic or not, it's getting that idea that tribe itself comes secondary to being Kenyan as a politician.
Fair point, and something I agree with as well is that, the tribal legacies left, the Kikuyu squatters, and once the British had actually left, there was a creation of such alliances as the KKK, and then KANU was born. This sort of left land alienation a huge problem in Kenya, and I think that has carried on and is having some kind of an impact on today's issues in Kenya itself. So even though we can't fully blame the colonial legacy because it was institutionalized and enhanced by the creation of the KKK alliance, the Kikuyu Kamba Kalenjin alliance. I think those such alliances and have institutionalized and have enhanced tribalism in this country. And Lawrence, what do you think is the best way to sort of bring tribalism down, or just get rid of it in this country? What do you think is the best way forward?
That is the hardest thing that can be done in this country. It's one of those challenges that even if we clear it in 1 year or let's say 5 years, we find leaders that are neutral. In the next 5 years, other leaders will arrive with tribalism being their core attachment, who will also bring back tribalism. Like we saw in 2004 election, Kenyans were all united and they voted one, and there seemed to be unity in the whole country. People are all focused in the same direction. But come the next election, things tribalism came up, and people are all divided. So it all begins with the leadership. If maybe we would get leaders who are policy oriented, leaders that are focused on development, leaders who are not looking forward for their own interests. If we get such leaders, that's the only way we can avoid tribalism and kick it out of the country.
Somehow I feel like we need an actual more extreme solution in this case. I think the way that they did it in Rwanda was actually far more effective. They made it legal. Tribes were illegal. If you're Rwandan, you're Rwandan. There is nothing else. They need to do the same here. You are Kenyan, you are Kenyan. It's not that you lose your heritage, you lose your culture. It's that first and foremost, you are Kenyan. And that's a simple thing. You don't bring it towards the political stage. Yes, it is a political factor. Make it minimal. Make it illegal. You can eliminate that thought from the mind of people. For example, when they were talking about in the election, they said we deny campaigning on tribalism because us Kikuyu have allied with the Luos. And the moment they start referring to each other in those tribes, they've already established themselves as tribalistic. The moment they've already separated Kenyans into certain groups and saying we campaign to all of them, that is not being non-tribalistic. That is being very much tribalistic because they've not identified them as Kenyans, but as Kikuyu, Kalenjin, Luo, whatever. And that is my problem with it.
I agree with that as well, and I feel we're making good steps towards kind of getting people to think on a more nationalistic level, like national interest above all else. And such initiatives as the I Am Kenyan project, which basically brings Kenyans together through photography, or the NDGK as well, who brings Kenyans together through sport and leisure as well. These are small steps to kind of bringing Kenyans together and getting rid of the notion of tribe. Of course, it's going to take a while until we finally completely, eliminate the whole kind of, notion of tribe. But we're still making steps towards progress, and I think the debate did show that we are capable of doing it. Raila and Uhuru calling each other brothers, or whatnot. I think that's these are good steps to ensure that Kenyans can work together regardless of tribe and ethnicity and whatnot. I think moving on to the next topic that was being discussed there, kind of the ICC cases. Would you vote for a local tribunal yourself?
Yes, I would. I'd prefer actually a local tribunal. I'd prefer the local courts. They are capable of handling all the Kenyan situations. But now, because the case is already in the higher court, I think the best thing to do is to let them go and follow the law. Let them go to the ICC, those who are elected. Let them clear their name. Let the cases go through, and then if they're free, they should come back and serve the people. That's just my own view.
That's fantastic. And during the debate, Mr. Kenyatta was being slammed heavily for his involvement in the ICC cases, and of course he personally, I believe he handled it pretty well, considering he was being slammed left, right, and center, about being an ICC, being on trial with the ICC. So so how do you think he handled those, the whole being slammed upon by the other candidates, by the MCs? How do you think?
I'll be frank and honest. I think he handled it relatively more composed than people perhaps expected. Perhaps the matter of this was that he was expecting these type of questions in the first place and had the appropriate responses. But I think he kept his cool. Perhaps this is also the nature of the way the debate was conducted. It was calm, composed, and it allowed him to gather his thoughts and so on. It wasn't heated, so it allowed him, and he did answer them very well. I think he did. But on the factor of the local tribunal, I don't think so. I think the fact that they are held somewhere else, in Geneva or whatever, I think it would show that Kenyans are willing to work with the international community wherever the international community feels it is best to hold them. It shouldn't be up to just us to make up additions of what affects our own people. We're an international community, it's a global community. The moment Kenyans finally realize that the world doesn't just exist and stop at Kenya's borders, they will begin to understand that there's more in this world than just us. Handle it with other people. If the Americans don't like certain candidates, you don't just slam them off. You take into account what they're saying, because you will have to work with the Americans at some